For you can my Wi-Fi. Well,
Vous avez réussi.
Tu travailles pas la fenêtre.
convento.
Elle voulait rentrer, mais ça s'est
This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. You think we're about to destroy us because we need to prevent the free speech, right? We should need to prevent the free speech. And now we, men, we science, we can do exercises. That's what the will of God, we can go against the will of God. So God was no longer the invention, right? And his ideas are portrayed in the line of movement. There, as I explained, the father of the mind.
Pero Juan Carlos, ven un segundo. Ven. Venga, vamos por aquí, Juanmi. Lleva tú.
Vamos a ver, no te digo los baby no. La puedes dejar para que la bebé. Los baby Et là, il n'y a rien les enfants. C'est demi-tour. Là, juste en bas.
buona?
Allez, venez les gars.
Tristesse.